Thanks for watching today. It's Tuesday. It is, for a lot of people, spring break. The legislature's in town. Still not sure if it's actually going to be a short week for them or not. Normally it would be, but who knows? 2018, anything goes. So we'll let you know as we find out. But today we're going to talk about the two latest tax proposals. Maybe you've seen these. They've been floating around for a while, but now they're putting these together. And I don't know. I mean, it is spaghetti against the wall at the legislature. We have been seeing this for years now. Spaghetti against the wall. Let's see what sticks. Hopefully this won't stick. I'm going to explain just how foolish this is, these proposed income tax increases. And I want to start off, actually, I'm going to start off with a metaphor. We also have a story about parents pushing back against computers in schools. Yeah, there are computers in Oklahoma schools. Who knew? Well, you know if you watch this program, because we talk about the fact that it's easier to buy computers than it is to pay teachers, easier to build buildings than it is to pay teachers. Anyhow, we're going to get there in just a minute. I was trying to think, what's the right metaphor for this tax proposal that, that would rely all on income tax increases in order to pay for a teacher pay raise here in the great state of Oklahoma. And here's the one I've got from my own personal life. You got to go with what you know, right? I mean, this would be like you're going out to climb a mountain. I was thinking about, I once climbed a mountain that had a 20-mile approach, or just maybe it was 18-mile approach. It had a long approach. You had to walk for a long time just to get to the climbing. And you had to carry all your gear, crampons, and an ice axe, and rope, and harnesses, and all this heavy stuff. You had to carry all that stuff for 20 miles just to get to the beginning of the climb, right? And I was thinking, I mean, this would be like the current proposal percolating in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. It would be like starting off on that walk and saying, you know, man, some of this stuff is really heavy. I'm gonna just leave the rope here. It'd be easier to go on with that. I'm gonna leave the ice axe by the side of the trail. You know what, I'm going to leave the crampons on the ground. I don't need to carry all that weight. I mean, for the next 20 miles, all of that stuff is going to be superfluous, right? But you're forgetting, if you do that, you're forgetting the whole point is, at the end, the whole point is the mountain climb. And this is something we ought to remember when we talk about education. Maybe some people are going to be offended when I point out this plain, simple fact that we should all understand. Education is a means to an end, right? Education is a way, and you know, I mean, of course, you know, whether we agree with them or not, I mean, a lot of people on all sides of this debate do actually point this out, right? The purpose of education is to produce an educated public, educated people who can go on and lead productive lives, right? It's not, I mean, the end is not sitting in a classroom or however it is that a student best learns, right? That is the means to some greater end. Walking 20 miles down the trail, carrying all that heavy stuff, that is the means to the end, and we don't want to sacrifice the end to the means. This is basic logical stuff that the legislature seems not always to understand. We don't want to sacrifice the end to the means. If we want good schools in Oklahoma that are actually educating kids so that they can grow up and be productive adults and stay here in Oklahoma and we can have a great future for our state, making Oklahoma less competitive in the long run is exactly the opposite. It's like leaving all your equipment at the trailhead because you don't want to carry it down the road, right? It's short-term thinking, sacrificing long-term results. So why is this so foolish? Why is this so foolish? We talk about state comparisons. We're talking about it on teacher pay. I mean, isn't that, at the end of the day, we're talking about raising teacher pay because we have this narrative, which is partly true and partly false. And again, thanks to the Tulsa World's Andrea Eager for actually writing about the ways in which this is partly false. A lot of teachers are just leaving teaching in Oklahoma because of job satisfaction, not because of money. They're not going to other states to teach in many cases. But we do know there are some teachers who have left Oklahoma, and we hear it over and over again, we've got to be competitive with Texas. And we hear it on other things too, and I agree. Oklahoma needs to be competitive with Texas. When it comes to teacher pay and other things, let's look at how Oklahoma compares. Okay, let's start with teacher pay. I've got the chart here from the 1889 Institute that factors in cost of living, because you've got to do that. But when you factor in cost of living, Oklahoma and Texas teacher pay, Oklahoma jumps, Texas jumps too, right? So Texas, Oklahoma, you make that comparison, and we are, we're lagging behind without cost of living. We're lagging behind when you adjust it, right? So That is a big reason why, a big part of the reason why I agree that we should raise teacher pay. But let's look at some of these revenue sources. Okay, let's look at the gas tax. These are all things that have been talked about. I want to get us used to thinking the right way about tax policy, right? Okay, gas taxes, gas and diesel taxes. You can look at the map there up on the screen. Oklahoma is low. We are low when it comes to that. Texas is low too, but they're a little higher than we are. Kansas is also on the low end. Missouri is also on the low end. Missouri is about the same as Oklahoma, but Kansas is higher. Arkansas is higher, right? So the gas tax, we could increase the gas tax a little bit and still be regionally competitive, still be competitive with Texas. Okay, there you go. Cigarette taxes. We've heard lots of talk about cigarette taxes. This has been the only program, I think, the only media program in Oklahoma that's actually provided people with real information about the cigarette tax debate. And I've showed this chart before on the program, but I'm going to show it again, right? Oklahoma, we're lower than Texas, lower than Kansas when it comes to our cigarette taxes. We are way higher than Missouri, which is a big risk factor if we're going to raise cigarette taxes too much. We're lower than New Mexico. We're lower than Arkansas by a little bit, right? So again, like the gas tax, here with cigarette taxes, if regional averages and competitiveness, if we understand those factors and we want sound public policy based on those things, we could increase those taxes a little bit without shooting ourselves in the foot. How about income taxes? I don't even need to show you the map, but I will show you the map for just a minute. Income tax, so we're a hair lower than Kansas, we're a hair higher than New Mexico, we're higher than Colorado, we're lower than Arkansas, but Arkansas has been cutting taxes, higher than Missouri, lower than Missouri, but Missouri's been cutting taxes as well. But we've got this big, on this map, this big looming gray problem to the south of Oklahoma, and it's called Texas, right? And this is something that Oklahomans understand. Oklahomans in business understand, right? We don't see a bunch of businesses moving to New Mexico or maybe not to Kansas so much, but we do see people and businesses and investment moving to Dallas and moving to Houston, and a big incentive to move there is take-home pay, right? I mean, that's. I said it carefully because if I just said taxes, all these people would say, well, it's not. Nobody cares about taxes, right? Which is a ridiculous thing to say in the middle of a debate where people are saying, well, people are moving to Texas, teachers are moving to Texas because they make more money there. Part of the reason they make more money in Texas is that they pay no income tax, right? Texas has a competitive advantage because people pay less income tax there. Okay. One more thing I have to say about good tax policy, then I'm going to say something specifically about these measures in the legislature that are, again, they've been kicking around for a while, but they're being revived by House leadership. And that is this. Income taxes are bad taxes because income taxes are penalties on productivity, penalties on work. And income tax is literally a penalty on work, right? And a capital gains tax is a part of an income tax that is a penalty on investment, right? People investing in businesses, people investing in real estate, people putting their money to work in the economy. Income taxes, people putting their labor to work in the economy, getting money back in exchange for it. If you don't believe in incentives, tune me out. If you don't believe that human beings respond to incentives, tune me out. But then, of course, that's crazy. Nobody actually believes that. Everybody believes that human beings respond to incentives. We all know that's true. We all know that income taxes, in the world of taxes, right? You have to have taxes. Government has to have revenue, but not all taxes are created equal. Some are worse than others. Income taxes are worse than consumption taxes because income taxes tax the very fuel, the foundation of the economy, which is investment and work, right? So, I mean, look, for reasons of regional competitiveness, especially with Texas, for reasons of just good, sound tax policy that does not drag on our economy, raising income taxes, whether it's capital gains tax or general income tax increases by capping itemized deductions, those are the two proposals. They want to eliminate our capital gains deduction, our capital gains program in Oklahoma that basically says for a lot of capital gains, it's when you buy an asset, you own it for a while, it gains value, you sell it, you get capital gains, you get some income from that, right? In Oklahoma, we say on a lot of those things, we're going to charge you the same rate they charge you in Texas, and that's zero, right? And we leave people with their own money. I've had some people say, well, this is a handout. It's never a handout when you leave people with their own money. That's not a handout, right? This is equalizing our capital gains with Texas. And on the other side of that, we have this proposal to cap itemized deductions. It is a straight up income tax increase. The reason the politicians like it is because they can do it without sending it to a vote of the people, because they don't have to get 75% in the legislature to pass it. They can get a simple majority and pass it on their own without sending it to a vote of the people, right? So that's why they like these things, because these things are able to, by basically playing verbal games, the Supreme Court and the Oklahoma legislature, they're able to say that, well, these aren't really revenue bills, they're just bills designed to raise revenue, right? Go read the Constitution, it says revenue bills, you'll see how disingenuous these people are, right? How much they are shading the truth at best. I'm not supposed to call people liars, so I'm not going to say that about anybody here. But look, you can go read the Constitution for yourself and see just how disingenuous all this is. It is bad public policy to raise income taxes to pay for a teacher pay raise, right? I mean, I guess the thinking goes like this. Here's the logic that must be behind this, right? So we're losing teachers to Texas. We want to raise teacher pay. So we're going to increase our income tax so that we can educate students in Oklahoma so they'll be smart enough to figure out where to move to south of the Red River once they graduate, right? As we gradually make ourselves less and less competitive with the big state south of the Red River. Is that the thinking here? We want to make sure our schools are good enough that people know to move out of Oklahoma because of the damage politicians have done to this state. Again, education, it's a means to an end. It's not the end. Let's not sacrifice the ends for the means. Okay, one last thing on today's show, and that is I came across this. I was doing some more research for a piece that I'm writing. I've just literally stepped out of the office in the middle of writing it to come and do the show today about funding silos in Oklahoma and how we make it easier to raise money for buildings and computers than for teachers and textbooks. And I came across this great letter. I'm so glad I stumbled across it because I want to share this with you. A letter from parents in Norman, it ran in the Norman transcript, expressing their concerns about the Norman School District teachers are getting ready to walk out of Norman Public Schools. What are they going to leave behind? They're going to leave behind a school district where every student has a MacBook. I don't even have a MacBook. Every student has a MacBook in Norman, apparently, and some parents aren't happy about it. They ran a letter, they ran it anonymously, which you see this all the time. It's always fascinating to me. You see this in public schools where parents know that their students could be subject to blowback if they're actually honest in their criticisms of the way schools are run. That in itself is telling about the conditions down in Norman. What did they say about these computers? I just give you a couple little highlights of this letter. I'm going to share this out in the show links. I think this is, as a parent, I think this is important. I've shared before, my kids, they are virtual school students, so they use computers a lot. But the amount of parent supervision that goes into that, right, is what makes it all work. And in Norman, they've cut parents out. This anonymous letter from an anonymous group of parents here says that there was virtually no school-to-home communication as Norman Public Schools rolled this out. They say Norman Public Schools rendered parents powerless from the get-go. Parents don't have access to their children's passwords. Children can change those passwords at any time. There's no parent portal for parents to supervise kids. They say, quote here, many of the parents monitor our kids' other technology use, cell phones, tablets, etc., but we are completely in the dark about their computer use, even though they're connected to Wi-Fi 7 hours a day. And they go on to talk about the fact that these laptops that have been provided to students, following up other computers that were put in the classrooms in Norman Public Schools, they had already been having problems with schools, even in elementary schools, with computers even in elementary schools that have been accessing pornography sites, accessing other kinds of content that is probably not edifying for elementary school students. And Norman Public Schools decided to double down and give every student a MacBook computer. Again, this is an example of two things. One is school bureaucrats who think that they're parents, who think that they know better than parents, they should be in charge rather than parents. And there are already reports that I have seen of parents pulling their kids out of Norman Public Schools or planning to do so because of this program, which really shows this attitude that the school administrators there have, and also just the way that we spend money in Oklahoma, and how, think about how foolish this is to be providing every student a MacBook. Think about in a classroom of 20 or 25 kids, think about how much money that costs, right? Rather than make sure that the teachers are being well paid, right? Why do we have a system? Why do we tolerate a system that allows that to happen in the great state of Oklahoma? I'm going to talk more about that this week. As I mentioned, I'm writing an article about how to make some changes. There's legislation to make some changes to all of that. I think that we also need to put a lot of pressure on local school boards, because in some cases, it's really the local school board's fault. They like to use funding silos as an excuse. I get this pushback all the time. Well, it's illegal. We can't do anything. It's illegal for us to use this money for teachers and other things. I was actually just looking further into this, and in many cases, that's a smokescreen. They just want to spend money on buildings. They want to spend money on technology. That's more fun than giving teachers a raise. It's also more temporary rather than making a long-term commitment to teachers. It's less risky for them politically, even though it is oftentimes, I think, the right thing to do, to put the money to teachers, put the money to textbooks, put the money to the things that matter most. Isn't that common sense? Can we have some common sense in Oklahoma public policy? We're going to find out. I'm Trent England. Thanks for watching the show. Remember, you can subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, find us on Facebook, find me on Twitter at Trent England. I'm not always there, but I'm there almost every day. So you can find me in all those places. I'm pretty much always keeping an eye on the Facebook feed. So if you got a question, a comment, if you got feedback, send it to me over at one of the Facebook pages for the show. And thanks for watching.